consumer preferences are what they are. And it's nicer to wear garments that are made of cotton or natural fibers than it is to wear viscose or polyester. So it's just the way it is. And the same thing will be seen with single-use wipes. When consumers realize that when you're using a typical wipe to clean your counter, that it's plastic, or you're using one of those wipes at the grocery store to clean the handle and disinfect, that's plastic. It's unnecessary, and there's better alternatives.
That's Jason Finnis from Bast Fiber Technologies. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Hi there, my name is Eric Herlock. Welcome back to the Hemp Show. Today we're going to dive back into the world of nonwovens. A couple of months ago, I talked to Maddie Mead from Hempitecture about the hemp opportunity for nonwovens in the built environment. Today we're going to learn about the hemp opportunity for nonwoven hygiene products. These are personal care products like wipes, pads, diapers, things that play a huge role in our lives but often go unnoticed. More often than not, these ubiquitous nonwoven fiber products are made from petroleum, oil, plastic. And do you really want microplastics in your most intimate areas? Yeah, I certainly do not. And that's exactly what has motivated Jason Finnis and the team at Bast Fiber Technologies. For over 30 years, Jason has been working to bring hemp fiber into hygiene and next-to-skin products, not just as a sustainable alternative, but as a technical, high-performance material that's ready for the market now. So we're going to talk about regional supply chains, fiber quality, customer expectations, and the big opportunity for American-grown hemp in a global fiber economy. All that and more right after these messages. This week's show is brought to you by Hemi and the Goodness of Hemp campaign. Hemi stands for the Hemp Education and Marketing Initiative. Hemi's mission is to accelerate the growth of the industry through leadership and market awareness of hemp products and solutions. Hemi is fostering new business opportunities through innovation, best practices, and partnerships that benefit U.S. farmers and processors. The Goodness of Hemp campaign shares the virtues of hemp with policymakers, manufacturers, and consumers. Find out what the Goodness of Hemp can do for your business at hempinitiatives.org. Okay, welcome back. Can you believe it's the middle of June already? Time is just flying by. And what that means for me is that there's less than a month before the Global Hemp Fiber Summit at NC State in Raleigh, North Carolina. Like Guy Carpenter said on the show a few weeks ago, if you are serious about building a business and making money in hemp fiber, this is the place to be. So I've got the registration link on the show page for this episode. Go there, get a ticket to the summit, and I'll see you in a few weeks in Raleigh, North Carolina. So today we're going to get back into nonwovens because there is so much opportunity here for hemp and for other natural fibers. I love this conversation with Jason Finnis because it highlights for me the supply chain. The fiber processing that happens at Bast Fiber Tech is just one step on the way from field to finished product. And as we will see, it's a very important step in the supply chain. And Bast Fiber Tech is committed to building regional circular supply chains, which is music to my ears. Let's go talk to Jason from Bast Fiber Tech. Jason Finnis, welcome to the Hemp Show. How are you doing?
I'm well, Eric. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning about what you do in the hemp space. So first, I wonder if you could give us just sort of a short personal introduction.
Sure. Well, as you said, my name is Jason Finnis. I'm one of the founders of Bast Fiber Technologies. I am the Chief Innovation Officer. I have spent the last 30 years of my life in the hemp industry, starting grassroots right from the very beginning in an old Volkswagen bus, right through to today where we've been working to commercialize hemp fibers into hygiene and next-to-skin applications. So I work with our product development, R&D teams, and business development as well.
Awesome. Cool. It's exciting. All right. So first, give me sort of the elevator pitch. What is Bast Fiber Technologies, and how would you describe the part of the hemp industry that you're in?
Well, I would say, to answer the second part of your question first, we are in the secondary processing side of the industry. Our company is focused on taking decorticated hemp fiber and upgrading it for use in hygiene, next to skin applications, whether that's textiles, personal care, areas like that, as well as into consumer products for cleaning and for insulation and things like that. So yeah, we upgrade our fibers in 2 locations. We've got one in the United States in Lumberton, North Carolina, and the other one is in Germany, just outside of Dusseldorf.
Okay. All right. So Bast Fiber Tech has been described as a clean tech fiber engineering company. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, essentially, when you are looking at the markets that we are focused on, the technical bar for the fibers is very high. But we are looking to supplement or replace plastic fibers and other man-made or semi-man-made fibers in a process that has never really used natural fibers before. So it's very important for us to focus on the fiber quality to ensure that we, quote unquote, engineer these fibers to the specifications that the converters are used to. And that engineering, obviously, we are not pulping, we're not changing the cellulose structure of these fibers. We're taking natural plant fibers and upgrading them, but we are able to tailor our processes for end use applications. So what I mean by that is that we can add performance to the fibers. So if we're looking in being the top sheet of a product like a diaper, we can make our fibers behave better by changing their properties a little bit. And we can also add finishes and various things to make the fibers more appropriate.
Okay. So for listeners who aren't familiar, let's talk about nonwovens. You mentioned a few examples in your last answer, but, where do we interact with them in daily life?
Oh, almost all the time. So a lot of the hemp industry focus on insulation has been around behind the wall. So behind the drywall, in between the studs, there's great companies out there that are producing very high quality insulation. Other areas of nonwovens go into automotive parts, whether that's a composite or as like a fiberglass mat replacement. But the nonwovens that we are focused on, is the ones that we interact with most, are usually in the single use category. So I'm talking about surface cleaning. So if you use a wipe to clean your bathroom, or you're cleaning a table, or you're cleaning your baby, or using hygiene products that are single use and disposable, typically that's our main area of focus. That has been our area of focus.
Okay. I'll just add that I have 2 teenage daughters, and there's a lot of single-use non-woven things in our bathrooms, like little cleaning pads and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah. And the fibers in those are usually plastic or a semi-synthetic. It's an invisible source of microplastics and landfill contamination or pollution.
Yeah. And that's the issue that you guys one of the issues that you're addressing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we started the company originally, actually, was to address this issue and to come out with a natural fiber replacement that worked very well on the conversion platforms to be able to make those products with efficiency and accessible economics.
Okay. I know my family, they go out of their way to get organic cotton pads, but there might still be microplastics in there, huh?
Well, it depends. It's a case-by-case basis.
Right.
If it's 100% cotton, odds are there aren't going to be any microplastics in it. Typically, these fibers are blended. They're blended in with a semi-synthetic or a full synthetic.
Okay. I'm also thinking of Claire Crunk from Trace Fem Care. And her story is incredible with hemp-based tampons. And I'm not sure where she is in her development story. But yeah, I mean, it's like you never think about where the microplastics are, right? But then you find out where they are and how they're getting into it.
Or where the opportunities for hemp are. Yes, I know Claire and I know Olaf fairly well, and I'm impressed with them both and impressed with what they've been able to accomplish. And what they are showing and what other companies like them are showing is the market and the opportunity for these fibers in a hygiene product. It's certainly not the first place people think about when they think about hemp fibers or other alternative fibers, but the market is there, and Claire is a good example.
Yeah, and I know she's had some issues with the FDA. The FDA is getting involved, and maybe this is
I don't know that that's
an
an issue. I think that that's just par for the course. In the United States, a tampon is considered a medical device, and so it requires FDA compliance and certification.
And they were asking her for, cannabinoid content of the fiber, just like with these weird hoops. I don't know the full story, but let's move on from
That
there.
happens. That happens to us every once in a while
Does
as
it
well.
really?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
you have to prove there's no THC. Yeah, well, it's, for those of us who are embedded in the industry, it might sound crazy, but for those who are just coming to it for the first time and don't understand, it's an easy hoop to jump.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people out there who are outside of the hemp space, when they hear hemp, they think weed.
Yeah. Some do.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but, through education and, conversations like this, we are trying to slowly change the hearts and minds of the people.
It is slowly changing. As I said, I've been doing this since
a long time.
I guess it's been 1993 is when I started. And back then it was a absolute regular occurrence that hemp was not anything other than a smokable product. Now, some people will just default to thinking, oh yeah, that's in my cosmetics, or that's in the bread that I buy, or I put those little things onto my oatmeal in the morning, the little seeds on my oatmeal. So It is changing, and it will continue to change. So
good. Yeah. All right. Well, let's change gears a little bit and talk about sort of the products and the processes. All right. So walk us through your process from receiving decorticated hemp to producing the final fiber product. What happens at your facilities in Lumberton and Germany?
Yeah, well, obviously I can't go into like too deep of a specific, but what I can tell you, as I mentioned before, we don't pulp the fibers. So we're not changing the fibers in a chemical, like dissolving them and then reconstituting them as you would do with a viscose or a lyocell. Essentially, when we purchase raw material, it comes into our facility, and then we thoroughly clean the fibers using a combination of processes to clean the fibers and basically removing anything on those fibers that would be considered a contaminant. At the same time, we control the length, we control the brightness, we control as much of the product as we can without changing the nature of the fiber. So it's always been important to us that we are selling an actual plant fiber, a staple fiber, as it's called in the industry, which means it's a fiber that came off the plant and has not been changed other than in cleaning. So we produce a hygienic product, or a product that can be introduced into a hygienic manufacturing process. We don't make any of those products, and we don't make fabric or things like that. We sell a bale of purified hemp fiber that's about 250 kilos in weight and looks very much like a bale of cotton.
So how do you tailor the fibers for different customer needs, like absorbency, strength, or fire resistance?
Well, yeah, fire resistance, I think that's an easy one. There's products you can add, like anybody who's in the insulation business would be adding a finish or some sort of fire retardant to the fiber. And you can do that in a very eco way, or you can do it in a less eco way. So there's always ways that you can modify the properties of the fiber. But I think some of the most important areas to look at are the way the fibers are grown, and just to ensure that your supply chain is high quality. And, the adage that I always say is that quality starts in the field. And if you're not monitoring how the crops are grown, how they're retted, how they're processed through the decortication process, then you're not going to be able to turn it into a high functioning consumer product. So that's where our focus lies.
Okay. And so are you then working closely with farmers, or you're working with decorticators who are working with farmers? Talk about some of those relationships.
We work throughout the supply chain, to be honest with you. And work that I've done in the past, I've led farmer field days on how to grow these crops specifically for a next to skin application. We've run decortication facilities, so we understand the process. And so whether we're dealing with the farmer or the decorticator, we are able to source material that fits our requirements. And that is the biggest quality indicator that we have.
Okay. Do you refer to the company as BFT internally?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, BFT.
All right. So you said BFT doesn't sort of make, products or wipes. You just have you sell bales of hemp, really. So who are your customers, and how do your fibers get to the store shelves then?
Ultimately, our customer would be the nonwoven converter. And these are the companies that exist globally that buy staple fiber and then they run it through a formation process. And sometimes that is a hydro entangling where they're entangling the fibers with high pressure water jets. Sometimes it's done with needles, like in a needle punch application. Sometimes it's done just through air, where a random assortment falls onto a belt. So yeah, those are our customers. But ultimately, when we are working to get our fibers out there, we also deal a lot with the end brands. So whether those are their brands, whether they're local or global, we work with their product development teams to help design products. And then we pull that demand through our supply chain to be able to get the fibers to them that they want.
Okay. Can you talk about any of those companies that have those sort of end products?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's a few great companies in Europe that we are commercialized with. There's the Milwali, which is a period care product out of Scandinavia that's commercialized. We deal with Clinic. It's an Eastern European brand. There's a number of companies like that we are commercialized with, and a number more that we are in development with.
That's cool. All right. Let's talk about the properties of hemp. What makes hemp especially well suited to nonwovens compared to, other fibers, flax, canaf, things like that?
Sure. Well, those other fibers you mentioned are bast fibers, and they all have excellent properties. I think that when you're looking at hemp fiber or bast fibers in particular, you can look at this from a number of perspectives. One would be sustainability. They're very high biomass yielding crops. They grow relatively simply in a regenerative or organic way. They tick all of the boxes when it comes to what brands are looking for, which would be carbon reduced, water reduced, chemical reduced. They're easy to grow in the United States. They're easy to grow basically anywhere there isn't permafrost. So you have local supply chains that can be built. So from a manufacturing perspective and from a sustainability perspective, they're fantastic. When you look at their properties in these products, they have great absorption numbers. So for absorbency, they're quite good. They're very good in insulative, whether it's acoustic or thermal. And so that's great for like the boards that are behind you on the wall, but it's also great for thermal layers in apparel. So using it as an insulation in a winter jacket or something. So they've got great properties, and they're also quite soft, which is kind of contrary to what people might think who are not familiar with these types of fibers. They're very nice next to skin.
Good. All right. Do you work with all types of hemp, or do you prefer, like fiber-specific varieties?
Depends on the end use. Most of the time we deal with a fiber-specific variety, but depending on where the fibers are destined, we can work with various qualities and various retting degrees.
Okay. Are there any challenges that come with sourcing fiber from like cannabinoid hemp or grain hemp?
Yes. When you're looking at a next to skin application or some of the higher end, we tend to stay away from the cannabinoid fibers and seed varieties. The percentage of fiber per stem is a bit lower in some of those varieties, which means you have to process more to get the same amount. So it's less economic.
And that's a function of like fiber plants grow tall and they don't sort of branch off when the other varieties do sort of branch off and have.
And also, finola or some of these other seed crops are very short. And so while you might get 3 tons an acre of a fiber crop, you might get 500 kilos per acre on a seed variety.
That reminds me that I got an email from the creator of finola a few weeks ago. I should write back to him.
Yeah.
I did write back to him, but I haven't heard back from him.
You haven't heard back from him?
Yeah.
He's had quite an impact on the industry.
Well, tell me about that. How do you see the impact of finola?
Well, just because it's the de facto crop when you're growing hemp for seed. Finola has been very successful in Canada, and as you'll no doubt know, in Canada, hemp has been grown since 1998, and it's always been grown as a seed crop. Well, primarily as a seed crop, and finola has been the base workhorse of that.
Okay. I sense a little bit from your voice that you might know something about Canada.
I do, yes. And I'm speaking in kilos, I notice. Kilos and acres. I'll switch to hectares. I am based in Canada. I'm based in Victoria on the West Coast.
Wow. I would love to get out there someday. I hear it's very beautiful out there.
It is.
Well, let's talk about the supply chain. And, the great thing about hemp, as far as I'm concerned, is it has this potential to be circular, right? To have our manufacturing near the processing, near the fields. And I think you have that sort of in, I don't know, that's sort of in the core of BFT, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Grow, process, and sell in the same geographic region. That has been our cornerstone.
Yeah. So why is that important? And is it feasible in the US today?
Yeah, well, it's important from a supply chain efficiency perspective. It's important for continuity of supply for your customers. I think looking back in time, looking at COVID, I think what we saw was convoluted supply chains are problematic when something happens. And that if you have a product that's grown here, sent over there, way over there to do the entire manufacturing process, you can run into trouble. So grow, process, and sell in the same area limits some of that risk. But also at the same time, you're limiting the carbon output of shipping. You have regional impact when it comes to working with your local farming base. You're giving them, in some cases, additional farm gate revenue. You're supporting farmers in your community. Because, when you're talking about a decortication mill, there's only a certain radius around that mill that you can ship fiber economically. So putting things close by makes a lot of sense. And then when our manufacturing, for example, when we're in Germany, we are able to pull from the surrounding countries very, very easily, and gives us continuity of supply because we're able to mitigate some weather risk. If there's a catastrophic event that happens in one growing region, then we can move and source from a different one. And that is our goal in the United States as well. Long before last November, we had made the decision that we wanted to have a facility in the US that was growing and processing fibers that have been grown in the southeastern United States. And that's still where we are. And that we are working towards, and the supply chain is starting to mature. So yeah, that's exactly our goal.
Yeah, it is starting to mature, isn't it? It's really exciting to see.
It is.
See it coming along. So what do you need from decorticators to meet your quality standards?
Well, from a decortication perspective, maintaining fiber length is important. And that's going to be the same whether they're selling into a textile company or any other group that needs a staple fiber. In decortication, it's important to keep the fiber as long as you can for as long as you can. And by doing that, you don't limit where you can sell the fiber. So if you're running it through a very, very aggressive system where you are pulverizing the fiber and turning it into very short fiber, you're going to limit the market that you can sell to. So our advice to decorticators is always to keep the fiber long. And if they can keep it in the 2, 3, 4-inch area, maybe 3 inches, that's a great place. We also, at the same time, require the fiber to be relatively free of herd. And so we're looking down into the single digit percentages, probably less than 3, of herd contamination. And so anybody in the decortication industry knows that there's an inverse relationship between fiber length and cleanliness. The longer the fiber, typically the more trash. But there are ways. And so that's what we kind of rely on our decorticators to do, is to elevate the quality of the raw material.
Okay. And you've got, established relationships with those processors. Can you talk about who you're working with? And
no, I don't.
Yeah, you don't think you can?
No, I don't think I can. I think, we are open to working with everyone.
Okay.
And any strategic relationships we have or anything that we're working on, we got to sit on that. But ultimately, we're here to support the industry. We want the industry in the United States, especially around our facility in North Carolina, to flourish. And so we're open to working with everyone. And what will determine the groups that we work with will be the quality from the field. So the quality of the farmers and the care and attention that's taken to grow a high quality fiber crop, and the care that they take in the decortication to make sure that we are getting a fiber that has as tight a length uniformity as possible around the target length, say that's 60 millimeters, plus or minus 10, things like that. We want to make sure that the fiber is quality. And so whoever is able to do that, we are more than willing to work with.
All right. Is there enough fiber decortication capacity in North America to meet demand?
It's coming. I'd say yes, there is for the current demand, and tomorrow's demand, I can see the decortication capacity increasing to meet it. So right now, our facility in Lumberton is primarily processing cotton, and we process a lot of cotton. And our goal is to expand that facility. We have the equipment on site and expand that facility for Bast Fiber introduction using United States grown fibers. So by the time that's installed later this year, moving into next year's crop year, then we will be ensuring that we have relationships with the right decorticators and the right farmers to keep that demand fulfilled.
That's awesome. So great to hear.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah. You must be psyched. You must be just so proud of all of it. So.
I am very proud. It's from my starting out and withdrawing from university to start a hemp business and having everybody look at me like I was insane. And it's been a tough road, but it's great to see so many people working so hard to further this thing because it's the right thing to do. And it's pretty impressive.
Cool. So how are big consumer brands responding to, the natural fibers?
Oh, they are pushing for them. In the nonwoven, the textile, the packaging industries, there is a major movement to eliminate plastic. And, plastic has its place, and we're not going to bash plastic because in certain applications, in certain areas, plastic is required. But there are many areas where it's not. And in these single-use products and in packaging and things like that, there's a lot of waste. So I think what we're seeing right now is a convergence of three factors. One, you've got consumer preference to get rid of single-use plastics, like whether it's plastic bags or whatever it is in your life, straws, whatever it might be. Then you have the brands that are pushing for their supply chain to go plastic-free. And then off to the side, you have legislation, which is like in Europe, they've got the single-use plastic directive, which is very aggressively pushing brands and manufacturers away from single-use plastic. So they're looking for natural fiber alternatives. And it's a major opportunity for all of us to replace that with a compostable, plastic-free, tree-free fiber.
Yeah, I love that. I'm also concerned, the oil industries, very wealthy, a lot of lobbying power here in the US, and they probably want to keep single-use plastics, don't they? I don't know. So there's we're up against a lot of sort of the powers that be, I think.
Yeah, but I think that there's going to be plenty of places for the oil industry to continue to make lots and lots of money and to be able to use plastics wherever they need to. But consumer preferences are what they are. And it's nicer to wear garments that are made of cotton or natural fibers than it is to wear viscose or polyester. So it's just the way it is. And the same thing will be seen with single-use wipes. When consumers realize that when you're using a typical wipe to clean your counter, that it's plastic, or you're using one of those wipes at the grocery store to clean the handle and disinfect, that's plastic. It's unnecessary, and there's better alternatives.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm not on the side of the oil companies and all. That's not why I brought that up.
Didn't expect you were.
But they'll be happy to hear that there will be some market share left for them. So as these products, do you think hemp products will be labeled as hemp fiber or something a little more generic? Do you think people are going to want to know that it's hemp in the thing, or will they care?
Well, you know what? That's probably, it depends on a couple of factors. One, what the product is. Like in textiles, the labeling laws say that if any fiber is more than 3% of the garment, I think that's the amount, 3%, it has to be called out specifically on the tag. So it will be called hemp, or it'll be called probably hemp. But in a non-woven, you can go to the grocery store and buy a package of disinfecting wipes and it won't tell you what the fabric is made of. So it's not required in that industry. But certain brands are going to want to call it out. It is a marketing benefit for them to be able to talk about this. And
transparency. Yeah, consumers want transparency.
They may push the carbon reduction. They might push the compostability or the plastic-free status of these things more than they say, hey, it's hemp. Because we are activists. We're up there on our soapboxes trying to get everybody to use it, but the brands aren't. So whether they say it's hemp or not, but as long as they're buying it and incorporating it into their products, then that's a win.
Can you talk about the difference between sort of commercialization opportunities between the US and the EU?
Well, Europe was our first stake in the ground. We purchased our facility in Europe a year and a half or so before our one in the US. And I think Europeans, and both markets are fantastic, but I think Europeans might be a little more aware of some of the environmental. They make maybe a little bit difference when it comes to single-use products. So we have a great market in Europe, and we have a much larger great market in the United States. And the consumers in the US that are concerned about this are a very vocal segment of the population, and they represent a significant buying power. So the brands that are there are, whether you're talking about a global conglomerate like Procter and Gamble or a smaller company that might be like Honest Company, they're looking for these types of products, and the consumers are supporting them.
Okay. So Germany, North Carolina, what's next? Are you looking at any other places in the world to put production?
No, not really. We're looking at expanding our footprint in the US by doing this facility expansion in Lumberton with equipment that we have on site and supporting the growth of the industry down there so that we can start really pushing the Made in America hemp products. There's a big opportunity there.
Well, how big is the market opportunity?
It's going to have a lot of zeros behind it. Like if you just look at non-wovens, you're talking about millions of tons of fiber going into these markets. And we're going to have like 20,000, 30,000 tons of capacity. So we are dropping the ocean in this, which is why the plastic industry is not going to be too concerned about us. But it will make a massive difference regionally and to a lot of smaller brands and to a lot of people who are looking for these types of products. It's a significant volume for us as we grow.
Yeah, and I think it's like you have to talk about sort of like the health implications of humans not putting microplastics in their body as much. So I think like what you guys are doing is just so important on so many levels. So thank you for doing all of this.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned you've been in the space 30 some years, and now things are kind of coming together. We talked about it briefly a little bit about like, you're very proud about this. Like, tell me more. Like, yeah.
Well, 30 years ago, I was a student at UVic, and I saw an article in a magazine about hemp paper. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. That's what we should be doing. And so I had a 1966 Volkswagen bus, and I filled it up with all sorts of industrial hemp products. I went to folk festivals, flea markets, any market I could get to get the attention of people, to see what do people think. And that led me down this path. And what I find now is that when I phone a company or email a company and say, this is who I am, I tend to get the email responded to. Whereas 20 years ago, it was just like off into the
crickets.
Right, yeah, exactly. My calls wouldn't be answered. So there's a lot of us who have been in the industry for a long time and have seen the same growth. We're seeing things actually picking up and moving forward. So it's a good time. And I see a lot of opportunity as we look forward, because I think the momentum that the industry has right now, and as I said, legislation, consumers, and brands are all picking up on the same mega trend or the global trend towards, using our resources more wisely. It just makes a big impression. And I think there's a big opportunity for us and for all the other fiber guys, whether they're cotton or jute or whatever it is, there's a big opportunity.
That's awesome to hear. So you talked about Lumberton, you've got your processing plant there, and I guess I'm headed down to North Carolina in a few weeks because you guys are having the Global Hemp Fiber Summit at NC State, sponsored by the NIHC. You're going to be there. Good.
Yeah. They got me on the panel.
Cool. All right. I'm apparently the media sponsor or something like that. Nice. Media partner. So
congratulations.
You'll see me there. I do like a Kermit the Frog thing. I have a microphone and I go and I interview people. Yeah.
Excellent.
But we're going to go to Lumberton because I know there's some field trips, right? Are we going to take a tour of your facility?
I don't think we're on the docket for a tour.
Okay.
This time, I'm not sure
I know biofill natural fibers is, and
Yes.
It's neat that you're both in Lumberton, so I'm starting to get the sense that it's all coming together there.
I know it's going to be the epicenter of the North Carolina hemp industry, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Biophil is doing a great job. And I know that the support coming from NC State and David Sukoff and the entire team down there and at the Institute of Textiles as well is fantastic. And it's that type of focus from that team that's going to help this along, because every aspect of the supply chain is a full-time job. And so our full-time job is looking at upgrading these fibers and getting them into the market. And to have people like Biofill and all the other companies so focused on decortication, and then to have NC State being able to help with the agronomics and get farmers understanding, best practices, that's when things start to click, is when people are focused on every aspect.
Yeah, 30 years ago, could you ever have imagined it coming together like this?
Well, yeah, I 100% did. I started the company when I was, way back then, because I wanted to get it as big as I possibly could. And I saw this as like absolutely insane that we weren't using hemp fibers or hemp products. And that I just thought as soon as people understand that, they're just going to glom onto it and they're going to be fully into it. It's taken a little longer. I figured I'd be retired in 5 years, and I'm still hoping that it'll be another 5 years before I can. But no, I always thought this was going to be a big, big thing.
Cool. The world needs visionaries like you, Jason. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, there you go. That's the show today. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Jason Finnis for joining me on the show. So I've got links to Bast Fiber Tech and the Global Hemp Fiber Summit registration page on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. Be sure to tune in next week when I ask Oxford University Professor of the History of English, Linda Muggleston, if I'm chasing windmills here on my mission to defend the word hemp.
You just need to persist, really. It's not that you're trying to stop change entirely. That meaning is still there.
My name is Eric Herlock. I am the senior digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. Sign up for the newsletter, get a subscription to our print edition, read the latest stories in agriculture. Until next time, I will see you in the newspaper. This episode is copyright 2025 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show is written and recorded by me, Eric Herlock, and produced, engineered, and mastered by Justin Berger.